asked me before where I think you should start and what's interesting to me. And for me, I guess if I look at it on the broadest level, I'd like to understand what dreams are.
Okay.
Where do they come from? And then get into why do we dream? And then get into what do some of the symbolisms that come from dreams mean? So what are dreams? Why do we dream? And what does it mean? If that makes sense.
Yes, that's good. Well, what dreams are, in a nutshell, is a form of communication. And ultimately, it's a form of communication from the spiritual to the temporal, from our higher self, soul, to us. And the reason why we dream, and even the reason why we have to sleep, spiritually, ancient cultures have taught us that we have to sleep because our soul needs some uninterrupted time for guidance. When we're awake, our conscious mind is so busy that the only way our spiritual or our higher self soul can get our attention, and most of us don't even realize why this happens, but you know how you get a hunch or you get a gut feeling, or you say, I should have followed my first mind because of something. That's the easiest way for them to get through to us in the waking state. And what that is that that's remnants of a deeper communication that's trying to take place. It is kind of like the sound of the gong after it's been hit. So that communication is happening, but we're so busy and our alpha waves are processing so fast that we miss the subtler form. So when our soul is communicating with us, when we're awake, we can only process it, or 90% of us can only process it as a hunch, as a gut feeling. But that's the internal guidance. So we never lose that guidance. But in a waking state, it is harder for them to get through. Our soul, our higher selves, our teachers, our guides. We have a whole team of people, of entities that are always around us to try to help us, to guide us. Sleep is required because that's the only time that we are slowed down enough to be able to receive the bulk of the communication. So it is almost as if our soul said, you know what? Okay, I am going to send an extension down into the physical realm. But I'm only going to do it if I could get some uninterrupted time, because once we hit the physical realm, we're gone. We're like, whoo! And we have so many things and distractions. So sleeping is built in to our incarnation to allow for uninterrupted teaching time and communication. So that's why we dream.
Okay. And in past conversations, you've talked to me about different planes.
Yes.
And how those planes are connected. And if I remember correctly, I think you said that dreams connect to a certain plane. So can you kind of talk through what are planes? How are they connected, if at all? And then where do dreams fit in the whole scheme of the planes?
Okay. First, we'll get into what a plane is. And basically, in a nutshell, a plane is a vibratory level. Everything in existence exists in a certain vibratory state. I like to use water as an example because it's something we can readily see. Water exists on the physical plane in three primary states: solid, liquid, and gas. When it's in its solid form, it is ice. The vibrational level of water in its ice state is an extremely slow vibration. And the molecules and everything are vibrating at such a slow level that it actually becomes solid. Well, that's what solidity is. It's a very slow rate of vibration. When you add energy into it, it agitates, or I should say it excites is a better word for that. It excites the molecules and the atoms. When they start to absorb that energy, they vibrate faster. The way we add energy is through heat. So when you heat up ice, as the molecules and as the atoms are absorbing that energy, they start to vibrate faster and faster and faster. So then what was once solid is now liquid. If we stop adding energy, it will remain in its liquid form because now it has absorbed enough energy that it is vibrating now at a form where it's much more fluid, it's movable, it can go places that ice can't go because its vibration is higher. If we continue to add energy to it, the way that we know energy, via heat, then it absorbs more energy. The more energy it absorbs, the atoms become more and more excited, and the molecules vibrate faster and faster and faster. The more it absorbs, then it turns into steam. Those are three different vibratory states that are inherent within the physical plane. So when I say a plane is a vibratory rate, that's what I mean, that there are things even within our physical plane that are vibrating at such a high level, like steam, that we can't see it.
So you're saying human beings, people vibrate at different levels and different rates?
We have a basic physical vibratory frequency that we all share. The physical plane itself is a distinct vibratory level. And within that level, there are different rates of vibration within that level. So that's why on the physical plane, we have so many different manifestations of life. Like we have four primary kingdoms. We have the mineral, we have the plant, we have the animal, and we have human. Now, what's going to differentiate them ultimately as the vibrations go higher has to do with spiritual and soul, and we'll get into that too. But just to answer the plane question, within the physical plane, the plane itself or that particular vibratory level. So we, in this context, we could use the word plane and vibratory level interchangeably because that's primarily what a plane is. It is a vibratory level. And then within that level, there are different vibratory rates. Like and that's why that I use water as an example because it's stark. We've all have ice in our freezer. Take the water that's vibrating a little bit faster, put it in the freezer because cold slows vibration, heat raises vibration. And there's this amazing theory in quantum physics called the string theory, talking about every single thing is just a vibration. It's a vibrational string. If we can look at it this way, using the word vibratory level and plane interchangeably.
Okay.
So within the physical plane, which is one vibratory state, within that state, there are different vibratory levels.
That's pretty informative.
Okay.
I understand that you're saying that human beings exist at a physical plane, and then within that physical plane, there are other planes within the physical plane, and that dreams happen at one or all of those planes?
Dreams actually occur or are stored in the astral plane. So the astral plane is what's known as an intermediary plane.
Is that the higher of the planes, or is that all the planes on the same level, or is the
No,
astral plane at a different level?
it's at a different level. So going up from the physical plane, you have, well, not up in a traditional sense, because we tend to think of up like this, and it's more of a spiral. That's one of the reasons why all the galaxies that we can see, it's all spiral. It's spiral. It is indicative of how the planes are. The physical plane, emotional plane, mental plane, astral plane, spiritual plane, co-creator plane, and creator plane. So there's 7 primary planes, and I say that with emphasis because there are primary planes. Each plane, except for the creator or causal plane and the co-creator, the causal plane is its vibratory rate, period, and there's no gradation within that plane because it's the source of everything. And then the co-creator plane, there's no gradation, but there are a lot of entities, or there are lots of beings, because as the creator plane steps down its energy and does what's called extending.
How do you tie all of that back to dreams and at what plane do we dream?
So how we'll tie that back, get co-creator, then you have what's called the spiritual plane. Then the spiritual plane, huge plane, it's the largest of all of them. There are so many levels. You can get into the monadic and the budaic, and you just have so many different levels. That's the spiritual plane. Then you have the astral. The astral is an intermediary plane from the standpoint of the next step down, you get into what we start to understand as things becoming matter and the physical plane, because you have to have a transition. So there's a period of a transition, and that plane is the astral plane. So that's kind of like the transitional plane.
I'm sorry, it's at that plane that dreams occur, the astral plane. Am I right about that?
That's where they're stored. Okay, so our soul sits on the spiritual plane. It's the lowest level of the spiritual plane, but still the spiritual plane. The soul will send down an extension into the physical plane. So it is kind of like you're sitting there and your whole body is your soul. Your finger, this finger extension, the soul pushes through the astral, through the mental, through the emotional, and into the physical, and it drops an extension into the physical. Now, because the vibration in the physical realm is so slow, it's so low, that direct communication, especially as the child grows, direct communications becomes harder and harder because it becomes mesmerized by the physical plane, because everything is right in front of you. You can touch everything. Everything is here and it's in your face. Whereas spiritual communication is much more nebulous to our way of seeing things. And so when it sends extension down, as it gets older, direct communication becomes less and less. And so the dreaming is when the soul wants to communicate, we go to sleep, the images are stored in kind of the astral plane. It's like a telephone, if you want to look at it that way. It's like, in order for me in Maine to talk to you in Texas, or me in California to talk to you in Florida, I can't just stand out my window and yell. I need a communication vehicle. And that's what the astral plane is. It is like a telephone between two people, or a video chat. It's a medium of communication. And so things are stored there, but it's communication. It's kind of like you can store things in your computer and you can pull them up whenever you want, or you can do a live chat or whatever. So sleeping is that live aspect of it. And so that's what dreams are, and why we dream, and why the astral plane is the intermediary level. And I know that's a lot of information, and we can clarify, just to be sure, we're going to clarify all of that. So please, questions, comments, all that stuff in the comments below, and we'll make videos about it. I will go into it and explain the whole thing. So there it is.
No, I think that's a good thing to say. And I think just through this discussion, it's touched on a few different little rabbit holes we want to go down. We want to talk about things like, you mentioned brain waves, getting more clarity on what that is and what it means, and how you apply it to everyday life, if it applies at all. Mm-hmm. How that soul extension thing happens. Mm-hmm. Pretty fascinating stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'd even say on dreams, you've covered it in a pretty general way. I guess the only other piece of that I'd like to get some clarity on is, what do they mean? If I'm dreaming about flying, well, what does that mean? If I'm dreaming about water, if I'm dreaming about running for my life, how do I come to understand what my dreams are trying to tell me, if anything? Because it sounds like it may be, it's not really telling me or trying to tell me anything. It's just a way of expressing what's been stored, I guess, in the astral plane. I could be wrong about that. So I'll just kick it back to you. Is what you've kind of explained why I dream. Mm-hmm. What is it saying something to me, and how can I start to decipher what it's trying to say to me?
Okay, twofold question. That's a good question. Thank you. And it's definitely telling us something. because one of the reasons why, and I have to touch on this just briefly in order for the next statement to make sense. The reason why the soul sends extensions into the physical realm is, first of all, because it's a hardcore teacher, because you can't ignore things too long in the physical realm, because everything is in your face. It's in your face. It's in your face. So it's almost like boot camp, from the standpoint of whatever it is that we come here to try to work out. Those are the things that we're going to encounter over and over and over and over again. And at some point and in some lifetime, we are going to start asking the question, why? That's an elevation. That's a vibrational elevation. Then we'll start to pursue or to look into why these things are happening. And then that'll take us into the area of why we came here in the first place.
And I know you need more specific information, so I'm not asking you to get into detailed dream analysis, but in a general sense, it's a dream about water. It's a dream about me being surrounded by water. My dream involves water in a way like that. What could that be telling me in a general sense?
Okay. In a general kind of overall sense, if you're in a pool and it has water in it and you're trying to get out and you can't, it's, in a generic sense, it is feeling emotionally confined or even trapped if you're trying to get out. Now, what the trapped emotion is associated with, of course, we would go into dream analysis. And then depending on like what it is, what's happening, all the other imagery in the imagery in the dream can point to what the actual trap is, because it could be a relationship, it could be work, it could be financial, it could be a lot of things that you have that's generating an intense, deep emotional response, unless it's a kiddie pool, that you are feeling trapped in. So,
and would that apply in a very general sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Would that apply to any dream that has water involved? If there's water present in my dreams, does that mean that there's some emotional trapping that's expressing itself? That makes sense.
That does make sense. And the answer to that question is no. And here's why. If you have water generically, of course, I can't stress it strong enough, broad strokes means,
Right.
symbolizes the unconscious, the emotions, and the subconscious. Okay, that's the overall. Now, how water appears, whether it's the ocean, whether it's a stream, whether it's a lake, is it moving? Is it stagnant? Are you in it? Are you on it? Are you under it? How did you get there? So there's so many factors that goes into it, but in an overall broad stroke, it means it deals with emotion, unconscious, and subconscious. And it doesn't mean trappings, or it could be, like the ocean is this big, vast expanse. And then depending on the context, it could be opening up and just emotionally free and deep, because the ocean is deep. And then it has all these mountains underneath it, which is indicative of air, or coming through a pipe. Pipes are artificial and man-made. Coming through a faucet could mean something totally different. A stream means something completely different than the ocean, because it's in the woods. It has minerals in it, going over rocks, and it's strongly connected with the mineral kingdom. I mean, so there's so many factors that go into it. And a pool is surrounded by concrete, and the water in it is usually chlorinated. So there's so many factors. But as I said, broad stroking, emotional, subconscious, and unconscious.
So it sounds like context definitely does matter.
Context is huge.
Is it possible to apply the same very broad strokes to dreams about falling?
Yes. Dreams about falling is broad stroking, a sense of losing. If you're falling, because you usually fall, see, there's a difference between falling and flying. Falling is something that you usually don't plan, that you're minding your own business. You were standing up and now you're getting up. It just kind of happens, so usually falling isn't planned. So broad stroking, it could feel like a sense of losing control, or a sense of not having control, or having it sometimes and not having it, depending on if you stumble and fall or just fall. And it depends on if you're on a cliff or fall off a step. So in broad stroking, it usually means a sense or a feel of a lack of control.
Okay. And you mentioned flying. Could you do the same with flying?
Yes. Flying, really, really broad stroking, can only mean a sense of like freedom and a sense of exploration. But again, it depends, because if you're in a plane is enclosed. And unless you're the pilot, you're not flying it. But that doesn't mean that it's not an adventure. And it doesn't mean there's not a sense of freedom. It just means something completely different in that context. If you're hang gliding, that's a totally different meaning. So you're out there and you're in that space and you're exploring, but you're controlling the glider. If you have no glider and you yourself are just up there and you're just flying and you're moving, now if you're gliding freely, then that's one thing. If you feel like if I stop flying, I'm going to fall, that indicates something else. But you're still flying. And it doesn't mean, and I can't stress this strongly enough, when we're having those kind of dreams, unless we get into like the premonition, which is a totally different set and type of dream that goes into something totally different. It's not really a dream. Almost all the time, it is to our benefit. It's for us to learn what they're trying to tell us and to take that and incorporate it into our working life. Say, for instance, with the pool dream, or within all the other contexts of it, if you're feeling confined, the rest of the context of the dream will point you directly to what you're feeling confined about. And then more often than not, it contained within the dream is how to help you get out of it. But if we look at something like being in the pool and see that as a negative thing, then we're missing the lessons, A, and then B, we're whatever that is inside of us that our soul sent us here to clear, we're now holding on to it. You see, so almost always it is meant with the intent to help.
So that's pretty interesting. And that kind of led into my last question, which had to do with how do I use what my dreams are trying to communicate to me. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like what you're saying is that once you understand what the dreams are trying to communicate to you, mm-hmm. then that is to be applied to your everyday life to get past emotional obstacles you may be dealing with, increase your happiness quotient, or just be able to better relate to people and the ones you love. So, understanding correctly, what I am to take from my dreams, once I understand what they're saying to me, is what I should be using to better and improve my life.
Yes, it should definitely be incorporated into your everyday life, because that's why we're having them in the first place. And I just want to say this as well, that there are dreams that are just your conscious mind processing. And once again, that you can primarily tell the difference between those two is because it's nonstop chatter. All of the different ways of looking at dreams are all valid at the level that they explore. So doing it from a psychological standpoint, valid. Doing it from just the mind trying to process, valid. Ultimately, all of those things fall within the overall spiritual form of communication.
Okay,
Hope that made sense.
It did. And so my absolute, well, maybe my absolute, but one of my last questions is, if I'm someone watching this video, right, and I want to really dig into what my dreams are trying to tell me, and I need to apply the lessons of my dreams to my life. If I'm having recurring dreams, or I'm having different types of dreams, and whether or not I feel they're trying to tell me something or not, I just want to kind of understand what's going on there, if there are messages I need to take from that to do that. What would you recommend I do as someone who's a novice and just really starting to understand some of this stuff?
One of the first things that I recommend, slow down, start to meditate. And what I mean by that is just 1 minute a day. 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night. Because until we can get our mind in a more receptive state, it's hard to hear. It's hard to understand, and it's hard to incorporate. As simple and as simplistic as it sounds, that will work. It will start to slow you down and relax you internally and mentally. Just that, because that's not a trivial thing. That is not a small thing. It's not a simple thing. It is the first and major step on that journey to understanding your dreams, and then to having that type of communication start to infiltrate your entire waking state as well. Just that 1 minute a day. It might sound simple, but it is profound. So,
Fascinating stuff, and it helps you see how it all ties together, right? How it's all, everything is interconnected. There's one more thing I'd like you to just kind of cover, and you've done this with me separately before, and I think it's fascinating. So I'd like other people to kind of see it too. But it's in the context of connecting all of these things we've been talking about together into what I call one big spiritual sphere, right? I think a lot of lay people like me, you separate the physical, or what you perceive as the physical, from the spiritual, and then from the God, if you will. And what we've been talking about is how all of those things are connected together. So you do an exercise where you help to show that we're not as physical as we think we are, that we, as what we perceive as physical beings, where I can touch and feel myself and I can feel things, that is physical and that is separate from what might be spiritual. So can you, I think you know what I'm talking about, magnification exercise, but can you kind of walk through that just to kind of give people a feel for what I'm talking about?
Okay, yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a good point. We, in the physical, every single thing we see appears to be solid. It appears to be 100% solid. When in actuality, what it actually is it is the electromagnetic field that surrounds everything that gives it the illusion of solidity. And so the exercise is a simple one, but it serves to deeply illustrate how everything appears to be so separate ultimately isn't true. Visualize your hand in your mind's eye, and then what you see is a solid object. Now, pretend that you're looking at it under a high-powered microscope. What was once your solid hand becomes individual cells. Increase the magnification. Individual cells become molecules. Increase the magnification. Molecules become subatomic particles. Increase the magnification. Subatomic particles become atomic particles. Atomic particles, and then subatomic particles. And then when you increase the magnification, subatomic particles give way to energy trails. And when you increase the magnification, where are you? We're at the womb of the universe as we experience it. And quantum physics is getting deeper and deeper into that particular level. Now, this is ultimately where everything is coming into manifestation from that realm that we've been talking about, the spiritual realm, because things are coming in at that point. And then how we know they are, decrease the magnification. Now you see it's energy trails. Decrease the magnification, you get subatomic particles. Decrease the magnification, you get atomic. Decrease molecular, decrease cellular, and decrease again, and you're back at your hand. But where did you go? Nowhere but inside of yourself. We are an extension of every single thing. And so when we speak about the different realms and the different planes and all of that stuff, we can even have a understanding of it to a certain point just by using something as simple as a microscope. These things are knowable. It's just how willing we are. Like what you said earlier, how far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go?
Exactly. I think that's fascinating because it highlights and it illustrates the fact that we're not separate from the things that bring us dreams. We're actually a part of it.
Exactly.
That helps us understand that it's all interconnected. That's a great way to end this.
Yes. Perfect. Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's been fascinating, and I absolutely love this stuff, and I know you do too. And I hope you guys out there really, really get something out of it. Please, please, please feel free to comment, send me your questions and everything else, because we're going to be doing quite a lot of videos and a whole series on just dreams.